Hi, I'm Finnian Kelly, the creator of the Intentionality movement, and join me on this week's episode of the Jesse T Show.
Finnian Kelly, welcome to the Jesse T Show, brother.
I'm so glad to be here, Jesse. I've got a good vibe about you, and I'm looking forward to having a great conversation.
Same here, brother. One of our intermediary connections, one of our brothers, Jacob or Yakub, he connected us, and I'm so excited about this connection. You know, you're shining a light in the world. You're putting out a lot of amazing things for people. You're driving a mission, and I want to hear all about you and your story and your background in that mission. Give us a little context for myself and the listeners.
Awesome. So I'm doing something really new and really cool, which I'm excited about, which is all about intentionality. This is a word that it's been thrown around a lot recently, and it's quite interesting. Like, there's an intuitive understanding of what it is, and people go, they need more of that in life, but no one's really defined it, and no one really knows how to do it, how to have a framework. So I've been in the entrepreneurial space for 12 years. I've built a number of financial companies. I've built them and sold them. And I was working with a lot of entrepreneurs one-on-one through organizations such as Entrepreneurs Organization and Young Presidents Organization. And I was doing this work with them, and they kept writing testimonials, and they just kept mentioning Finian's the intentionality guy. And after a while, I was like, okay, I've seen this enough times with people who I really respect. Maybe I need to do something with this. And I started going back through everything I had done and realized, my life has been full of intentionality. Some coming from not a great place, but then after sort of an experience a few years ago where I really had an involved awakening, coming a lot more from a positive, healthy place. And I realized, okay, there's something in this. And I've created a philosophy. It's a way of being, a way of living. And I'm really excited to bring it to the world now. And I'm very focused. I call it a movement because this is something which people can jump on and utilize to live a really better life, and a life more of wholeness, and a place where they really are in charge of their destiny.
It's amazing, man, when we have things that come across our life's journey that are so powerful, so impactful, and so necessary for us to show up and operate differently, even for ourselves at first, and then also for other people. You know, I want to talk about the intentionality piece and what that is in a moment, but tell us about this awakening that you had recently, that, last few years, and what happened, what was the antithesis, and how did you evolve from that?
Okay, so Spirit has a funny way of sort of awakening you at certain moments of your life. You can think you're on a path, and if you're not really intentional about it and it's not fully your path, eventually Spirit will start giving you little signs and just saying, okay, you need to start doing something. And if you ignore those signs, eventually the divine or universe, whatever you want to call, will pick up your spirit and smash it on the ground to make you wake up. And that's effectively what happened to me. I was living what you think would be the dream life. And it actually was my dream life. I had achieved it. I had moved from Australia to Beaver Creek, Colorado. I was living in a mansion. I was there with my wife. I didn't have to work. I was skiing 100 days a year. I had great friends. I had money. I had it really all. And it actually was my vision statement. Like, I achieved it. I literally laid it all out. And this is where I was talking about before. I've always had intentionality in my life. The problem was, though, that sometimes because of my woundedness as a child, it was coming from a place of lack, a place of scarcity, a place of negativity. So once I'd actually achieved my dream vision, I was suddenly like, what is going on right now? And the hole was bigger than ever. And this is one of the challenges. It's like I have a statement that money is a magnifier. If you have a hole there when you don't have much money, when you have more money, the hole just gets bigger. And that's really what happened with me. And a series of events happened where my ex-wife's father died. We then moved over to an international country, which was awesome, but we'd suddenly gone from a big community to a small community. I was burnt out in a business. We had sold businesses, but we'd started other ones as well, probably distracting ourselves, to tell you the truth. And then we got in a legal battle over a business we sold. We sold to some very unethical people, and their whole strategy was basically to never pay us and put us into a big court battle. And all of this occurred at one time. And I was just lost, and I felt like I couldn't communicate very well with my wife, and a series of events occurred, which just ultimately one day my wife, it was just too hard for her and she left and never came back. So here I was sitting in this 9-bedroom mansion in Beaver Creek by myself, literally going, what has just happened to my life? Like, how did I get here? And it was the great awakening, because I was so low, like it was the lowest I have ever felt. And I didn't really know how to get through every day, but I found a way. And I decided in this moment where I was just feeling so bad, I was like, okay, there's two paths here. There's the path where I distract myself now, I don't deal with the pain, and it will be a lot easier now. But if I do that, I'm going to go down this path where potentially I lose trust of women, I close off my heart, I do some pretty nasty things to people, I become ego focused, and I go down this path, and I was like, that path doesn't look that exciting in the long term. Or I can do the opposite, which is I can sit right now in this house all by myself, be completely still, do not distract myself, not party, don't do drugs, don't be with women, and just sit there and confront everything that could have led for this event to occur. Because I was someone with intentionality, and it still occurred. So I was like, what might have contributed to that? And that looked as a horrible option. Like, that path looked disgusting. But I looked down, I sort of looked forward to a vision of where that path could lead, and potentially could lead to a place where my heart is open. I trust women. I fall in love with women. I fall in love with myself. I get to be a dad, all these different areas. And I was like, okay, really, when you look at the two options, there's no choice. So I sat there and I looked at everything. I looked at what could have contributed to this. Well, I suppose I had a lot of trauma as a child. I haven't spoken to my dad in 18 years. I have a lot of resentment against my mother. I have some body complexes. I have got focused too much on business and achievement. And I just went through systematically and went, all right, I'm going to address each of those things at the same time of trying to get out of bed every day. Like, it wasn't like it was an easy thing. So that's really where I discovered a lot of the tools that I talk about now with intentionality, was during that period. So that's really how it happened. I did some things like, I had a list. I discovered that if I had a list of 16 intentionality practices, which I discovered if I did 5 each day, I could get to the end of the day. And it literally was that serious. It was like, I did 5 of these, I'd be in a place where I was like, oh, I've survived. And if I did 10, I felt pretty good. So I'd literally just go through this list, and I was like, okay, what's the easiest one? Go outside and sit in the sun, get some serotonin. Okay, I'm going to do that. Go for a walk, do something kind. And I would just like pick, and in between, I'll just lie on the couch and give myself permission just to feel it. So that really helped. And then I did things like reached out to my father, reconnected to my father, had my mum over for a week, just did a bunch of different things, which culminated in me walking the Camino del Santiago pilgrimage in Spain, which is a 500-mile pilgrimage across the whole length from France to Spain.
Holy shit.
There's a lot there.
That whole story, brother. You know, it's powerful. It's yours. And it's also for other people that are going through similar situations. I too have gone through a divorce that I caused, essentially. And I'm a dad of 2 kids that I have shared joint custody with. And my ex-wife and I are exploring reconciling. And so, like, we're doing all these things, but being intentional is the main thing. And it sounds like, number one, what you did, not many people have the ability to do. Let me back that up. Everyone has the ability to do it, but it takes things like surrender, self-awareness. It takes bravery. And it doesn't seem like bravery, but it is, because a lot of people don't like to confront the darker sides. And you can't show your light and be a vortex of energy and light unless you walk through the darkness. And so, number one, thank you so much for sharing that journey and sharing your story. I think it's super powerful. And there's so much I want to talk about in that. So one of the first pieces is the forgiveness of self, it sounds like, and the self-awareness. And was that something that just kind of came naturally in that moment, basically because you had nothing else? Like, that was your first tool, is just saying, this is where I'm at, this is what I have to understand, and I have to dive deeper. And then talk about after that, some of these intentionality tools and some of these experiences that helps you say spirit, and you talk about these things. Talk about that journey.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you the self-forgiveness did not happen in that moment. It was more of an awareness that I was like, okay, I've been given this opportunity for some reason. And I'm a big believer that my whole life I've believed that we're on a path and the universe will give you certain experiences to awaken your soul. And that was enough to give me the impetus, the courage to face each day. But the self-forgiveness came a lot longer. And to tell you the truth, it's come in multiple iterations. There's been periods where I thought I fully self-forgiven, and then I realized, oh no, there's another iteration. So that's been a continuous thing over 4 years. So really on the Camino was an interesting place. That's where a lot of my awareness came from. So in the Camino, it's a predetermined path. There's actually a number of different paths which lead into Santiago, which is the place where the traditional pilgrimage would walk to. And I went there with no map, no phone, no directions, but you just went through an element of trust because there's a path that other people have walked before, and you walk there. And the way it's signaled is there's these little yellow arrows or little clamshells which just appear every so often. And what's interesting is you don't really have to pay attention to them. Like you'll just see them and you just keep walking, and you walk across a whole country following this way. But this is where I realized the importance of awareness and paying attention. There was this one moment where I was just so consumed in my story, in my self-guilt. I was punishing myself, and I had my head down, and I just sort of looked up at one moment, and I was looking around and I didn't see anyone. And I was like, where am I? I haven't seen a sign for ages, I just realized, but I was just so consumed. And in that moment, I realized, shit, I'm lost. I've lost my way. I've really lost my way. And that's a big part of my story, is how did I lose my way? And through it was becoming self-absorbed, not paying attention to the signs, not realizing that there's a bigger picture for us. And it was a real great analogy for my life, because I looked at it and I was like, okay, I've lost my way and I'm a long way away from my way. Like the path is over there. I can't see anything. Now, if I'd caught it early by looking at those earlier signs, I would have realized, oh, there's some pilgrims over there. I can see them. I can just go over there and it's okay. But because I'd stopped paying attention, I'd lost my way so much, it was really hard to find my way back. And it took a lot of effort. And that's effectively what happened to my life. And what I realized is that I don't want other people to have to get to that place. You do not need to have the holy shit moment where my life blows up in order to have a spiritually awaken. If you keep paying attention, you can do that. But if you don't, it will get to that place. So I realized the key with life is keep paying attention. You've got to pay attention. It's okay to lose your way, but you need to catch it quickly. And once you then find your way, you then need to make sure that you keep your way. And that's by these little intentionality practices, staying on the path, looking at what's important to me, looking at your own work, doing your self-work, and then life can be a beautiful path. And that's really what my whole story is about. So it's lose your way, find your way, and keep your way. And keeping the way is the most important part.
This experience is incredible. And for someone who I feel like I'm a mix between Indiana Jones and Doctor Strange sometimes. I love adventure. I love the mystical. I love the peeking behind the curtain and seeing what's out there. This sounds like it would take a good amount of planning, even though you kind of ditch the creature comforts of cell phone and different things, which I think is amazing because you were really focused on the journey. Even if you were, not focused at times, you gave yourself a head start by not being detached with these things that pull us away from the focus. So talk about where did you hear about this? How did that land for you? And then talk about the preparation and the traveling, and how long does it take to do this journey for most people?
Great question. So here I was, I've heard about the Camino before, just like in the previous times, and I was like, oh, that'd be cool to do one day. And literally within a 2-week period, I saw it pop up 4 times during that period. When my mum was over, we put on a movie and it was about the Camino. I lifted up a magazine and it was a Camino. And then I got it 2 other times and I was like, all right, I've got to start looking at signs. I'm meant to go to the Camino. So 3 weeks later, I went. I booked a flight And naturally, I always have a high level of fitness, so that makes it a lot easier. And a week and a half before, this is quite funny, I've done a documentary of the National Geographic before, and I was like, and this is a tendency of mine, I was like, well, I'll make this great for everyone else. I'll go share my personal journey so everyone else can benefit. So I started going down a documentary path, like reaching out to the people who had been the producers and almost pitching them. And then my actual like energy healer at the time just stopped me and just said, you cannot do this. Like, this has got to be about you. If you're there with the camera, you're going to be worrying about what other people are experiencing. And this is your moment, your journey. So I ditched that, but I actually called my little brother up and I said, well, because he's into film and photography, and I was like, would you come on this pilgrimage with me? It would be, I really need family and support around me right now. I need to feel loved. And to his credit, a week and a half before, he said yes. And
wow.
he came on this pilgrimage, and he's someone who's 4 years younger than me. This was the first time since he was 7 and I was 11 that we spent a month in proximity together, because I left home really early, and he came on this journey. Now, he didn't have a good base level of fitness, and I'll never forget the first moment. The first day is the hardest. Like, you arrive in Saint-Jean, Pied-de-Port in the southwest of France, and you have to cross the Pyrenees on your first day. It's like 25 miles and you cross the giant Pyrenees. And I remember sort of walking, it was like the most overcast, like foggy, cold day. And I remember we were walking for a bit and we were all excited. And then I get a little bit ahead of him, and then we hit the Pyrenees and we go up. And I look back at him and he just saw this look, and his face was just like, what have I got myself into? But he's a trooper, and he managed to get over the end of the day, had more blisters on his feet than anyone I've ever seen by the end of the day.
Wow.
And it was actually a story of both our journeys. Like, he didn't come for an awakening, but he definitely got one. And we walked across the country, and normally it takes about 5-6 weeks. But this is the situation I was in. I had a deadline because I actually had to be back in Australia for a legal battle over that business. So I had 23 days to do it in.
Wow.
And coming out to my birthday. So we were motoring. Like, we were having to do, some days we were doing 25, 30 miles. It was a lot. And then walking all day. And then at night time I had to deal with legal stuff. So it was just a lot. It was very heavy. And the classic story of this is I got to the end. We literally arrived at the end. We're having a glass of wine, checked the internet for the first time, and an email had come through saying the judge has had some issue. They're postponing the legal battle.
Wow.
So the whole time I didn't need to, but it was almost like, okay, universe. And it was that whole idea of stop worrying about something in the future, just be present, because that literally took away some of my experience on the Camino. And I was just like, I could have just focused more and in the present moment, but I did the best I could.
Be where your feet are. And it's so hard a lot of times, especially for entrepreneurs, because we have to have vision. We have to look into the future and pull back what the future looks like to give that to our people, to ourselves, for something to strive for. And if you're always stepping one foot into the future and or looking in the future, you're forgetting the present, which is really the only time we ever have. If you think about it, we don't live yesterday, we don't live tomorrow, we live right now. And being where your feet are and being present, it's a hard skill for many people. And it's something that it sounds like, based on your pilgrimage, this was something that was really universe punched you in the face with. Like, let's be here now. So,
yeah. It's one of my slag lines: be intentional, live in the now. Like, it's the big really important. Right?
And so when you're going down this path of 500 miles, and I'm a runner, and so I understand distance, and that's a hell of a distance. That's great. That's incredible. And just thinking about slamming it down in 23 days at 25, 30 miles a day, that's some intense stuff, especially when you mentioned your brother. He wasn't quite at the level of fitness where he probably was by the end of it, but it's incredible. So what were some of the physical things you experienced along the way? Did you have like any mental doubt? Did you have any, I want to quit? Did he have any of that? And then also, was there any wildlife, like an encounter with a bear? Like, was there anything going on there that was kind of funky or interesting, or maybe like a weird person you met along the way?
It's a great question. So there's some funny stories. So the beautiful thing about walking across a country, you see the country. Like, you're walking through the countryside, you're going through towns, and you see how every region is very different. Like, and they were completely different types of people. And Spain is full of different types of people in different communities. So there's a classic few things. So like my brother obviously was just in pain right from the start, and every day it was a challenge. And I had to it was actually quite nice. I had to nurse him a lot of the time and bake his feet, just look after him in dinner. And he was like completely broken a lot of the times. And in a weird way that helped me because it gave me some form of, even though I was like, you're meant to be on my journey, by me serving him, it helped me like get up each day and work through it, which was really nice. And I was strong until I wasn't, until later in the Camino, suddenly, because there's the big bits where you actually go through cities as well. So there's long bits where you're going through on pavement and you're carrying a pack. And I started getting like shin splints for the first time. And they were just agony and they were swollen. And in a weird way, it was the best thing because I got to such a place of physical exhaustion near the end that my mind switched off. And that was really my great awakening moment. I'll never forget this moment. My brother was actually in front of me for the first time, and we'd been walking through, they call it the Messiah, which is like this long stretch. It's like 80 miles of literally just desert, nothing. You're just walking through and you just keep walking into the sun.
Wow.
And it breaks people. And I was coming up to this bit where it was starting to climb up and there was some trees around and the sun was there. And I was just so physically exhausted. I just was so present. And in this moment, it was my big love universe moment where suddenly I just got tingling sensations coming through my body. I started feeling connected to every single living thing in the world. Everything was sparkling. And I just felt this extreme rush of love just coming through. And I never really understood this, how people would explain it until I had it. It's like, it happens, and it was incredible. And I just went, wow. And I sat down on there was a park bench right there, and I just looked at the sun for about an hour, and I'll never forget that moment. That was my moment where I truly believed in God, source, divine, whatever it is. It was like I'd always had an analytical understanding of it, and I was open to it, but I never fully embodied it. And this was my moment. And it's that story of like, sometimes you need to spend some time by yourself in some form of pain to really get to a place where you break down and you get out of your ego and just connect to your true nature, which was absolutely incredible. So that was one beautiful moment. We've got some funny stories. So my brother actually looks quite similar to me. We have like long blonde hair, and we're always just walking separate a lot of the time. Like, it was one of those beautiful things. My brother's quite quiet and he will just do his own thing. And I would walk in front, and it was classic. Like, I would just end up in a village, sit down and have a beer, and we had no communication between each other. And then he would magically appear. We just trusted that it would all work.
That's awesome.
And so we're always separate. And then sometimes we'd walk together, have a chat, and then separate again. But there was these times we would go through these old villages, and there'd be like old ladies. And these villages, like, it's quite amazing. Like, they have cows living underneath their houses. They're just like, it's very, very like rustic and basic. It hasn't changed for 1,000 years, I don't think. And I would walk, and I would see an old lady. She was like herding a cow, and I'd smile, and she would sort of smile back. And then Tristan, after a few days after this happening, he just said, wow, people aren't nice here. Like, they snarl at me and they're all like lost and they're confused. And it was like, what's happening? And then what happened was, one time we went to, they call it an albergue where the pilgrims stay. And I was coming upstairs, and a woman went, "Oh, hi again. How did you get here so quickly?" And I was like, "I've never met you. Like, I have no idea who you are." And then she was trying to put it together. And then I realized she thought I was my brother because we look very, very similar. And then we pieced it together. That's what was happening. I think these old ladies thought that Tristan was like a ghost or something. They were like, what is actually happening? I'd seen a ghost. So that was just one of those classic moments of, you're making an assumption of how someone else is to you, but maybe they're just having an experience themselves.
That's beautiful, brother. And what an interesting story, and how funny that at some point I probably would have turned it around and like started messing with people, you know, like, but I was going to ask you too, you know, obviously, you know, I'm ex-military and I'm big into the spiritual world now. And there's a lot of planning that has to be done. Sometimes it's just go with the flow and see what the universe will provide. But just even getting there, there's probably concepts of where to sleep, where to eat, you know, how much water to drink. Like, what was that preparation like? I'm sure is there like a Google site you just search, you know, doing the pilgrimage, and it gives you these steps? Like, what was your learning about how to do this pilgrimage?
Yeah. You know, I'm ex-military as well.
Oh, what branch?
I was an army officer in Australia.
Thank you for your service, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's another little connection.
Hell yeah.
So the planning literally was I looked up on a website, found a direction, got to the first place, and then you have a little, they call it a little passport with places to stay. And I just would walk to a town, because the great thing is you walk to towns, like every town, every 8-10 miles there's a town, and you walk there and there's signs, and it just sort of works out. And sometimes you'd get there and there was no beds, so you'd just grab a couple of beers and go, all right, let's walk another 8 miles. It was classic in that regard, and you just trusted yourself that because there was these albergues where sort of hostels where you'd stay, and all you need was a sleeping bag, some clothes, and it was really, really simple. And beautiful. I think that's actually a lesson in life sometimes, is that people get so caught up in the planning that they don't take any action. Like, you can always work it out. These days with a credit card, a phone, or whatever you want, you don't need anything. You can go somewhere and work it all out. And yes, there's some element of preparation, be a little bit smart, but sometimes just trust that it's all going to work out. And that's really what the Camino is about, is trust the way. Like, the Camino is the way, and it's very linked to another philosophy that I love to follow, is the Tao Te Ching. It's the way. Just trust it.
Hell yeah, brother. I'm getting chills thinking about this, because this is the type of shit I'm into big time. I mean, from sweat lodges to breath work to sacred plant medicines and coming together with all that stuff. Do you know if people, like, it seems like everybody might do this a little bit differently. So I'm thinking about, you know, you're talking about having some beers, but still continuing on the journey. Like, are there people that go strictly like almost pure, and they just keep, you know, just water and like healthy food, almost like a dieta? Like they just don't have any sex. They don't eat any red meat. They don't do any alcohol. Or is it more of a kind of like, it's okay to do those things, just do the journey?
It's more about the journey. And I think that's what's wonderful about it, is that everyone who's doing it, they've got a reason why they're doing it. It's some form of trauma, a life change, something's happened in their life. So it's beautiful, the stories you discover, and it's enough of a challenge anyway. You don't really need to challenge yourself even more. But there was some experiences, like, for example, one night I did some self-sabotaging behavior. We got to a nice town, and we went out to a nice restaurant, and then like bars and clubs, and I got really, really drunk. And the next morning I just hated myself. Like, it was actually like a self-loathing. And I was walking along the way, and I said something to my brother, and he goes, I don't think you really like drinking anymore, Finn. I've observed this about you. And I was like, I think you're right. And pretty much after that, I don't think I've really been drunk for 3 years. I've had like drinks, and like last year I went complete clean. Nothing, no substances. That was another period of my life where I was like, all right, I'm going to have a break. So things will come for you. But I think sometimes we are too hard on ourselves. We're always forcing the next thing. And when we do that, I believe sometimes the ego is creeping up in us, and it's almost like we want to out someone else and tell a story that we did it hard. I even noticed, because we were doing it faster than everyone was like, oh my God, here are the two blonde Australian freaks. And I noticed my ego starting to rise up and go, yes, claiming it. And I was like, oh, back off. Like, this is not a time. I'm trying to get rid of you. Like,
right.
don't rise up here.
Get rid of the ego. Yeah. It's one of those things where we can definitely do a lot of work on the ego, and it serves us in some ways, but it's just mindful to come from a place of love and honesty, and not let the ego control us, especially when it's in a place of like ramped up and it wants to prove a point. What are some other implements outside of the Camino that you're still using to this day in your spiritual walk? What are some things, some modalities? You talked about health and wellness. Like, talk about that a little bit, because it's really important. I'm into a lot of that stuff, and the listeners, you know, whether they're entrepreneurs, executives, or just kind of people looking to level up, you need to have daily tools. And I just want to figure out what your daily tools are. What do you do to kind of stay connected to spirit, and then your walk?
Brilliant. So you name it, I've probably done it, and I'm okay at exploring, but I also like to focus. So my favorite modality is breath. I'm a breathwork facilitator. Breath just found me, and it was incredible because I could put myself into an altered state quickly. I could release a lot of trauma. I'd get connected, and then the integration is so much quicker than any plant medicine, and you can actually get to the same state a lot of the time. So
it's insane.
Yeah, it's wild. And I just wish more people could discover it and understand it, because I drop people into that experience and they're like, that isn't possible. And I was like, yes, it is. And they have that experience and their just mind is blown. And the beautiful thing about it is it was from themselves. It wasn't from a substance. So they have this trust and this element that they can actually be so much more powerful than they ever know. So breath is my favorite modality.
Real quick on the breath, I want to interject because I want to talk about how powerful it is. It's weird how you said it found me. I say that all the time about things, about books, about people that are placed into my life. And it was like those signs that you were getting to go to the Camino. It found you. Like it was your soul's recognition of what it needed. And, for me, I'm an explorer. I like to adventure. I'll try everything at least once. And again, I'm also hard charging too. So there's that side of it. But the breath work allows you to use a gift that created us. It's the breath of life. It's pneuma. It's spirit. And, I'm a big Tool fan, and I've listened to them since I was a kid. And I don't know if you're familiar with Tool, the music, but they're wizards, and they're consciously awakened, and they know what they're just tapped in. And they have a song called Pneuma, and it talks about we walk around with one foot nailed down, like waiting to become Pneuma, waiting to become spirit, and how to release. And a lot of it's through breath. And I'll just share with real quick, someone I'm going to introduce you to. Her name is Tori Gordon. She's a soul sister. She's a client of my wealth management business. And we do a lot of fun stuff together. We have a retreat coming up in May that might interest you, but we're offering different medicines. And one of her medicines is breath work. And so she walks me through this protocol, and I'd love to hear about your protocol if you could share it in a moment.
Yeah.
But basically it's all the way in, all the way out through the mouth, and for as long as you feel called to do it. And she sets the setting. She has her incense, clearing out the energy. She's walking me through kind of very maternal way. So it's a beautiful, safe environment. And after what I thought was 5 minutes, and I've done breath work before, like Wim Hof and different stuff, but after what I thought was 5 minutes, 25 minutes had elapsed, and I had been doing this breathing cadence for 25 minutes. And then she's like, okay, drop in, or just kind of like focus on whatever she told me to focus on. And brother, for an hour, I was cemented to the floor because I was in my office. Yeah. I couldn't get up. I felt like I weighed 1,000 pounds. I was like, but I know how to surrender with the work that I do. So I was like, okay, I need to just lay here. And all the emotions that came up for me, all the visions that I had. And here's the thing, it was substance free. It was just breath. And so how powerful, if you can control your breath, the healing properties it has, the freeing of the mind and tapping into emotion and spirit. And so I'm a geek when it comes to that stuff. So tell us a little bit about your protocol, if you can, and some of the like, how often are you doing it and how often are you facilitating it?
Awesome. So what I love about breath is there's not one type of breath. There's a breath for every moment of your day, your situation. And when people ask like, what's your favorite spiritual practice? I just go, the conscious breath, like literally like just coming here and just stopping and just like breathing in from our lower abdomen up into our upper abdomen, holding it in our heart for a little bit, and then just letting it all go. When we do that, like, and I hope the audience does that right now,
I just did it.
Something happens. We just drop into this place of peace, resonance. I do it when I do keynote speaking, and it's the most powerful tool. If I feel like everyone's getting a little bit agitated, I just stop and let's take a breath. And instantly everyone just goes, whoa, what just happened? And it's because we got on the same resonance, which is absolutely beautiful. So that's, if anyone's going to start with breath, don't feel like you have to go to the craziest extreme of it. Like just start consciously breathing. It is the breath of life. So why wouldn't we use that to our power? My favorite protocol is a protocol which I sort of just discovered off myself making, but it's very based on Tumo practice. Like Tumo is the deep, accelerated breathing. And what I do when I facilitate people, it's the one which I want to give someone an experience which will blow their mind. This is the one. And it's quicker than anything. So I do in and out breathing, and I call it a 3-part breath. So it's like from the lower abdomen up into our upper abdomen, like an active, and then an passive exhale. So it's and I'll do that for it's normally around 7 minutes with good music. And then we go into a breath hold, and we hold our breath until I guide them back out. And then we do another round, and then hold the breath, and we do another round. So it's 3 rounds of breathing, 3 rounds of holding. And it's all music guided, which is beautiful. And I'm guiding through them, making them feel very safe. And then at the end, they're just blasted off. Like literally everyone's like, I've never believed in anything before, but I saw it. I believe it. I have this experience. I also when I ask them when they come in about how long you can breath hold, people say about 30 to 40 seconds. And I get them to hold to 4 to 5 minutes.
Multiple
and
minutes.
they can't understand it. They can't understand how they just held their breath for 4 to 5 minutes. And I'm like, that's the power. That's what it's all about. So that's my favorite protocol. I do that myself probably once a week. I wouldn't recommend doing it anymore. It's a very hard driving, clearing activity. People get obsessed with that because they become addicted to it because it's such a powerful state. But then I just do normal breathing each day. I'm a big student of Dr. Joe Dispenza as well. And I do the pineal gland breath each morning and release DMT, which is pretty wild too.
I want to hear about that personally. Is that something you could share, or should we talk offline about that?
We can definitely share about it.
Talk about that.
I'm a big fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I went to a week-long retreat with him in Marco Island last year, and I was really blown away. I'm not someone who goes to big retreats. I've never actually gone to a huge one before, 1,000 people in the room. But he's a master of his.
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I think I just cut out a little bit.
Yeah. So if you want to, I'll cut you back in. You said he's a master of his craft, and kind of go back from there.
Awesome.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So Dr. Joe is a master of his craft, and I identified why he's going so well right now. And it's because he hits both science and spirituality. He dances from the left side thinking brain to the right side feeling brain. So you've got someone in there and he's talking all about feelings and love and heart, and that's really what it's all about. And then the science person's just going, oh, this isn't true, this can't be. And then he smashes you with data and evidence. So then they get a little fix. And then the feeling people are getting a little bit bored of all the data, and they're like, just let's get back to the intuitive nature, and he dances over there. So he plays this game the whole time, which is incredible. And he just gives you a formula. His formula, he talks about, don't focus on getting healthy, focus on doing the formula, and you will get healthy. And it's all about connecting to the divine. So it's an incredible experience, highly recommend it. But one of the core power acts of what he does is he talks about the pineal gland. The pineal gland is in basically what the third eye really is. And the third eye isn't here. It's actually back through there to the back of the head, and it's in between the ears there in this area. And the pineal gland is the place where there's these little crystals, and when you activate them, they release, that's where melatonin is, and it ends up breaking down and releases into DMT, which is the base product in ayahuasca, in 5-MeO. So it's the whole idea that you can get this experience by not even having another substance. It's because it's all
endogenous. I know for a fact it's people that I listen to and study, you absolutely can release DMT within your own body.
It's amazing. So this pineal gland breath is all about you breathe up from your perineum, placing your sort of root chakra down there in your genital area, and you breathe it up your spine, and you bring up cerebral spine fluid, which is the magic fluid in our body, and you bring it all up, and you're squeezing, and then you're hitting the pineal gland, and you're putting pressure on there with the cerebral spurt. So think of a spurt of water coming up, and you know that it wants to go somewhere. So it hits, and then it presses on these crystals and it releases a big dose of DMT. And the first time you're just like, what just happened? It's almost like you're having a seizure. And the first time I did it, I woke up on the ground, on my face, and I was like, whoa. And now I've learned to manage that energy a little bit. And
So real quick, walk us through that process again. Because the idea, I get it. You breathe in from the root chakra, basically probably somewhere around, let's just be like right around the grundle or the taint.
Genitals. Yep.
Yeah. And you breathe up from there all the way up the spine, up into where you're placing, I think he talks about a blue dot, or he uses something, I've heard something before, using that as a guide to be able to get to where the pineal gland is. Is that it? It's just the thinking, the intention, the breathing from the root.
It is. It's breathing intention. So it's a long, slow breath. And you're squeezing from the perineum first, and then you're noticing it going up the spine. And I actually follow my hands up there. Everyone has a different style, but I follow my hands up there, really hold it in the heart for a period of time. Keep breathing in through the nose, one long, slow breath. And I get it up here, and then I lock it into the pineal, and I just focus my attention on there. And then I'm just squeezing all of my internal organs to put that pressure. I'm trying to squeeze out the last little bit of I don't know, a sauce pack or something, and it's getting up there and it hits there and goes, and then just, but it's a challenge. Like people go for years without hitting it. And that's part of it is like, it's an active, but it's also a very surrendering process and trusting that it works. And obviously I don't want to teach Dr. Joe's work. Like it's his stuff and it's amazing, but I find it's an incredible, powerful practice too.
So I am going to throw this out there. We're going to need multiple parts to this conversation as we're both kind of getting close on time here, but I want to tap back into Joe. And, I've done some research and some studying on Joe and some of the things he does. And I follow him, a little bit loosely, but I found him through either, I don't know if it was Joe Rogan or Aubrey Marcus, but are you familiar with Aubrey Marcus?
Yeah, I am. Yep.
And Kyle Kingsbury and what the work that they do. Incredible sources of light and wisdom and their experiential, things that they do modality wise. And it's interesting because they're successful entrepreneurs. They're highly fit, but they're also spiritually fit too. And I think we're seeing this beautiful change of the guard, so to speak, from the old to the new, or even to what it was always supposed to be to what it is now with consciousness awakening and warriors of light and these types of people. And it seems like you're in this field too. And I feel like I am, where, we're called because we have a message and because we have experiences to be able to share that with the world. And so who are some of the people, and if it's even some of the ones I mentioned, who else are you into outside of Joe Dispenza that helps you with your personal walk and your journey?
So Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, hell yeah.
Great teacher. So I spent a week with him and it was amazing. Like he just has a presence which no one else does. And it's a fascinating experience to retreat. He's like, he walks on stage. He's like this little old man and he like walks on and he'll like sit down, but then he won't. And he'll just sort of like be quiet. And then he just sits there for 20 minutes and just doesn't say anything. And then he just starts talking and it's magical. Like if you look at him on video, it's quite boring a lot of the time, but you're just in his presence. It's so strong. And it's because he's purely in the now. Like he truly practices what he preaches. So I love a lot of his work. I'm a big study of the Tao Te Ching. So I just like follow that a lot. And I just read a really cool interpretation from Dr. Wayne Dwyer, which was really good. And they're really my people. And nature, to tell you the truth, is my biggest teacher. Like I'm a nature guy. I spend most of my time outside climbing mountains, running mountains, whatever, or just sitting with the trees. And I actually feel like they're a greater teacher than anyone else. And I listen to other people and I love experiencing their interpretations. The only thing which I'm getting a little bit concerned about right now is that because there's such a movement in this space, there's a lot of people who are trying, but they're not embodying. And I call it managed vernacular. Like they can talk about it all day long. They actually make me feel insecure because like they talk so much. And then I look at them and I'm like, you're not fully getting this. So I'm always mindful of like, and I've spoken a lot about today, but it was just my personal story. Just be careful who you collect things off and just like have your own experience. Like this is your own journey. And that's the beautiful thing. If you get with nature will teach you better than any human being.
Nature is so powerful and it's a gift, right? From God, heaven, source, whatever, Gaia, whatever you believe in. And it really has a beautiful way of humbling you, its beauty, and then also connecting you. And during the summer, I have two sons, 6 and 4 now, but they were like 5 and 3 when we started doing this. There's a mountain here close to where I live, and it's about 1.5 miles, 2 miles up and 1.5 miles, 2 miles down. So, between 3-4 miles. And, I had my 3-year-old and my 5-year-old, and there's this really great like set of rock formations where they would play the hot lava game and like jump around, and I'd play with them and be a kid with them and just kind of, I've always been a big kid at heart. So it's easy for me to do stuff like that. But sometimes I do get distracted with like business and life. And so I really have to work center. And nature does that. And like, we have this beautiful walk up this mountain. And in the beginning, my now 4.5-year-old William, when he was 3, he couldn't make it up to the top of the mountain. And then after we went a few times, he started going further and further and further. And then eventually we get to the top of the mountain. And when we get to the top of the mountain, there's this beautiful overlook into like this just part of Georgia that's just so serene. And we have this little like overledge of a beautiful stone that we can all sit on, and we sit on it and we're still. And so I'm teaching my 6-year-old and 4-year-old how to be still. And the way that they're being taught right now, just because, A, the part of the world we're in, B, what my ex-wife's beliefs are, is God and just kind of that religious structure, which is a good starting point. But, I'm the spiritual guy that thinks about some other stuff. And so I bring them up there and I'm like, listen, this is your time to connect with God. This is your time to feel how you feel. If you want to say some stuff to God, and so it's just like this, and it's done wonders for us. We'll eat our little snacks and we'll sit there, and sometimes we chat. Sometimes they get up and run around and play, or sometimes we just sit still, and it's free. It's breath work. It's nature. It's all these modalities that have been given to us. So I love that you're into that, man. And again, we haven't even scratched the surface on the financial businesses that you've created and sold and what you do now. And so, I want to talk about all that on the next conversation, but real quick, I'd be remiss to ask you, is there anything that you're working on now or that you're focusing on today that we can help share that message with the world? Yeah, there is. So I'm focused on this intentionality movement. So intentionality to me is all about intention, designing what it is that you want to feel. And it's about feel, not anything else. It's the feeling, and you get that through experiences, and then deliberately taking steps towards it. You don't need to know where exactly you're going, but you just need to be moving and taking steps. And what I discovered with going through a bunch of different retreats and looking at all the self-help movements, that there's really 4 paths that people look at of why they're at anything. One is direction. They want to know where they're going, a bit of vision, what they're trying to achieve. Another one is prosperity, idea of money. Another one is love. They want more relationships. And then the other one is well-being, which is physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional. So I realized that I want to help people find their way and get on their path. It's one of our taglines is get on your path. And we've created different pathways. So we've created a pathway for each of these areas: the love path, the prosperity path, the well-being path, and the intentional path. And it's a framework to discover your path and then stay on it, which is really, really important. So that's the products that we're doing. But really, we want people just to commit to this life of intentionality. Join the movement. Join this movement that you're not going to be living the status quo. You're not going to be living someone else's, living the conditioned state. You're going to live your life on your terms, and it can be absolutely beautiful. And that's what the intentionality movement is all about. So that's what I'd love people to join. I've created a dedicated page for your listeners. So if you just go to intentionality.com/podcast, they've got some really cool resources. I give them a intentional living guide, which will be how you can start living more intentionally each day. And there's a number of other tools there as well, because I just want people, I give away so much free stuff, because if you live this, the world is better. And that's what I really want. Leave everyone better than you found them. And not that you have to put yourself on a pedestal, but just adding value in every interaction, and adding love to everything that you do. And that's what's going to help the world get to where we're going. And so, number one, I'm in love with our dynamic. I'm in love with the energy that you brought and the message that you deliver. Let me be the first from the Jesse T Show audience to say thank you for delivering it. Thank you for being you. He's the amazing, the mighty, the powerful Finnian Kelly. I'm Jesse T. Be sure to catch us on next week's episode of the Jesse T Show.